Hello, friends. This is Dolores Williams of DW's View Stand Up. If we do not stand up for what we believe, who will? This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. I want to thank my sponsors, and let me tell you about them. They make this podcast possible. If you are a leader, professional, or an entrepreneur who is feeling frustrated or anxious because you're not performing at the level that you know that you're capable of, then you need to unlock your life today and get your complimentary strategy session with Coach Kim at unlockyourlifecoach.com. And DW's View Stand Up is also sponsored by the American Patriot, Mr. Mike Lindell of My Pillow. Now, the promo code, if you want to support me, is Stand Up. You can call 1-800-645-6436, and you can also log on to www.mypillow.com/stand up. And finally, please contact me directly to learn about my DW's View Patriot Shopping Club. Now, you can switch from the big box retailers to a Patriot-owned business where you can shop for products that are better, safer, and less expensive than the stores, and saving 30 to 50% for products made right here in America. And to my audience, I want to thank each of you for taking the time to watch and listen to this podcast. And I am blessed to introduce you to my special guest today, Mr. Shawn Collins. Let me tell you just a little bit about him. He's a Republican running for the position of governor of the state of California. Shawn and his wife, Zena, have 4 children, and they have lived in Orange County for the last 15 years. Zena is a Lebanese immigrant to the United States. Shawn is a Navy combat veteran and a lieutenant commander in the Navy Judge Advocate General's JAG Corps Reserve. He's going to tell us more about that. But Shawn also served 7 years in the Navy JAG Corps, in addition to a tour of duty in Kandahar City, Afghanistan in 2011 and 2012. Now, Shawn was born and raised in the inner city of Dallas, Texas. He was a basketball player, a graduate of Rice University, earned his law degree from the University of Texas at Austin. Welcome, Shawn, to DW's View Stand Up. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Dolores. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes. Well, we're going to go right through that bio. You have a wonderful bio and a wonderful story to tell, and we want to tell it.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Now, first, I want to thank you for your military service. I love our military and taking a stand for our country. And I want to also thank you for running for the governor and shining light on some things that need to have light shined on, what's happening in the state of California. Now, there's a lot of people running for governor, Shawn. Why do you think that you would be the best person to replace the current governor?
Yeah, so I think that what distinguishes me from the other candidates in the field, you're right, there are a lot of candidates, but I think what distinguishes me is it is my military service. And I'll tell you why that's so important. So my military, first of all, it's my pleasure. You said thank you for your service, but that's something that my family does. So I come from a long line of military service. My grandfather's a World War II veteran. My father was a Vietnam era field artillery officer in the United States Army. My older brother served as a surface warfare officer down in San Diego on 2 different ships. I chose to serve in the United States Navy JAG Corps. And the reason why I take a great deal of pride in that is when I look at the history of the United States, I can say with a great deal of pride that every time the United States of America has needed my family, somebody in my family has stepped forward to serve. And I take a lot of pride in that. And I'm planting that same seed in my 4 children as well. I remind them all the time that the highest calling that you can have is service to your community, service to your country, and obviously, service to your God, but service to your God is manifested through your service to your country and your service to your community. And, so like when people say, well, why are you running for governor right now? I view me running for governor right now as an extension of my service to the state of California, because I don't need to tell any of your viewers or anybody out there, California's doing really bad right now. And a lot of people say, well, that's a political statement. It's not a political statement, because a lot of the things that are going bad in California right now are impacting all 40 million Californians, irrespective of their political affiliation. I tell people all the time, when a person goes to the gas pump right now, there's not a price for a Republican, there's not a price for a Democrat. It's the highest price in all of America. It's almost $7 per gallon, and that impacts you if you call yourself a Californian. And so these problems are so big, we need strong leadership in this state right now. So when I look at why things have gone so far off the rails here in the state of California, it's because we lack leadership. And I'll give you a concrete example of what I'm talking about. So right now, our governor, Governor Newsom, has been going all over the state campaigning, or not necessarily campaigning, but basically going around the state talking about our drought problem. Now, my big frustration there is that he keeps talking about this drought as if it was an unexpected surprise. And I always try to remind everybody in California, back in 2014, as a people, we voted yes, overwhelmingly, 70% of Californians voted yes on Proposition 1, which allocated $7.12 billion in bonds so that we could prepare ourselves for future drought. That money was specifically allocated so that we could start storing water and creating the infrastructure necessary to route the water from our abundant northern part of the state to the southern part of the state, so that when drought-like conditions arose, we were prepared. Our governor did nothing. And let me remind everybody, in 2014, that's when he was starting his term as lieutenant governor. So he's now had 8 years to prepare this state for when a drought arose, and he did nothing. Not a single dollar of that bond money from 2014 has been spent. Not a single project has been broken ground on. And when the drought hits, his solution is he comes down to Los Angeles, does a press conference, and says, if you guys don't stop using water for your lawns, I'm gonna stop you from taking longer showers, and I'm gonna cut your water off so that you can't mow your lawn. Now think about that for a second. He's punishing us for his failure to plan. And so when I say this state is in desperate need of leadership, I can give you 5 other examples in different facets of our government, whether it be our K through 12 education system, the homelessness problem we have going on in this state, the high cost of living, the inflation that we're dealing with. All of these things were preventable had he actually planned over the course of his 8 years in Sacramento, but he did not plan. And so people will say, well, what makes you uniquely qualified? Well, first of all, as a military officer, that's one of the first things you learn when you're going through officer training school. Like there's a quote that they use a lot in the United States Navy, and it's a quote from Admiral Rickover, who's the father of the nuclear Navy. And he says, you don't get what you expect, you get what you plan and inspect. Now, the reason why they repeat that quote over and over to officers is because you cannot create expectations for good things to happen. You have to plan for good things to happen. And not only do you have to plan, once you create a plan for how you want good things to happen, you have to then train to that standard. It's one of the reasons why the United States Navy, and every branch of the military service for that matter, spends an inordinate amount of time training. Because if you want to perform at a standard of excellence when combat actually occurs, you have to train for that. So the same applies in government. If you want to be prepared for forest fires or wildfire season, if you want to be prepared for drought-like conditions, if you want to actually solve your homelessness problem in your state, you first have to come up with a plan for it. And then you have to train and execute in advance of the crisis actually happening. And we're not doing that in this state. And like I say, that's something that I spent 8 years on active duty. I'm still in the United States Navy Reserves. I'm about the 15-year mark. I have 15 years of leadership experience in the United States Navy and in the private sector. So I'm also a partner at my law firm. So I run my consumer protection practice group in my law firm, and the same applies. That skill set that I got as an officer in the United States Navy applies in my law firm setting as well. So when I get a new case from one of my big clients, the first thing I do is come up with the strategy for how we are going to successfully litigate this case on behalf of my clients. I sit down with my team, I sit down with my associates, and we come up with the plan and we execute. We train, so that when our client needs us to be great, we're prepared.
Amen.
As my dad used to always tell me, success is when preparation meets opportunity. All right. It's a very simple formula for life. And right now, California is not having success because our governor never prepares for anything.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that you've said, Shawn. You are telling the truth. Unfortunately, the people of this state not hold him accountable for his lack of carrying out the duties that he was elected to. He's not been
That's
held
right.
accountable. He's been reelected, and now he's trying to get reelected again, and he hasn't even carried out any of the responsibilities. It's easy to blame other people, but to
That's
never
right.
take responsibility for your own failures.
You're right, Dolores. And that's the big frustration. He just did that recently. So he did an interview with the San Francisco Chronicle, and the entire interview, he's blaming the people of California.
Mhm.
So he says they are responsible. They are the reason. He calls it the NIMBYs, which is that's short for not in my backyard people. He says the NIMBYs are the reason why we have a shortage of housing in this state. It's the NIMBYs that are responsible for our homeless problem because they don't want to help with the homeless problem. He always blames somebody else. That's the hallmark of a bad leader. Somebody that is completely unwilling to accept any responsibility for all the bad stuff that's gone on.
Yeah.
This is an individual that was the mayor of San Francisco for 8 years, then was the lieutenant governor of our state for 4 years, and then now has been the governor of our state for 4 years. So he's had 16 years of working on this homelessness problem, and it's gotten worse. And not only has it gotten worse, the epicenter of it, and probably one of the worst parts of it, is in San Francisco, the city that he was the mayor of. Like it's clear and unequivocal that the responsibility for San Francisco being in the state that it's in falls right at his feet, yet he's unwilling to accept any responsibility. Like he won't even acknowledge that he played a part in creating that situation in San Francisco.
Well,
that's concerning.
Yeah, it is concerning, but you know that. But why are the people of California continue to vote for him? Why
That's a great question.
It doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican. It's where you live. That's where you hang your hat. That's where you raise your family. Where you live is the most important thing on a day-to-day basis. Where we live is very important. And the impact that we have on other people's lives is very important. And
I'll tell you why people continue to vote for him. He takes advantage of the fact that we are the wealthiest state in all of America. We're the fifth largest. California is the fifth largest economy in the world. We have a budget of over $300 billion. This year, we have a budget surplus of over $100 billion. And he takes advantage of that abundance of resources. And anytime the people of California start to get a little bit uneasy with him and want to call him onto the carpet for failing the state, he starts handing out money. So think about it. Here's a prime example of it right now. We are facing the highest gas prices in the history of California right now. Yes. We're paying the highest gas prices in all of America. Now, one of the reasons why California is paying those high gas prices is we have the highest gas tax of any state in all of America. We pay an additional 51 cents per gallon that the rest of America is not paying. It's actually about to go up another 2 cents to 53 cents on July 1, which he promised he would not let the annual increase happen, and he did it anyway. And so the Republicans, which is a very small minority because we have a supermajority of Democrats in our state legislature in Sacramento, the Republicans, since January, since the Ukraine war kicked off and gas prices started to increase, the Republicans have been lobbying for the suspension of our gas tax, meaning, and think about that for a second. That word suspension is important because a lot of times Democrats will say, well, Republicans are so unreasonable. We asked for a suspension, not an elimination. We didn't say do away with it. We said just suspend it to provide temporary relief to the hardworking Californians that need it right now. And they said no. They've now said no over 8 times. They are refusing to suspend that gas tax. Why? Because they have a supermajority and they answer to no one. And they're effectively daring the people of California to vote him out. Now, here's to answer your question directly. Why do Californians continue to vote for him? Because he's a savvy politician. He knows that money talks. And so what is he talking about doing now? And he's been going all over the state telling everybody, I'm giving you your money back. I'm going to give you a $400 rebate. I mean, it's just like a salesman. It's like when I see him on television, it's like a used car salesman. He's telling everybody, I'm going to give you $400 of your hard-earned taxpayer money back. Well, here's the reality of it. If you and Californians are smart. I'm confident that Californians are going to see through it this time. That $400 is going to get you about 2, maybe 3 tanks of gas in this climate. 2, maybe 3. And think about when he's handing it out. So he's not giving it to us right now when we need it,
Oh,
as we're
yeah.
going
Yeah.
into the Memorial Day
Exactly.
weekend and people are trying to make trips to visit family and friends. Nope. He's waiting until about August, maybe
Oh,
September
yeah.
time frame,
Yep.
right before that election hits,
Yep.
just to remind all of California, hey, I'm your sugar daddy. Don't forget to vote for me.
Uh,
Don't fall for it. That's my message to all of
yeah.
California. Don't fall for it. It's the same old song.
Yeah. Well,
I'm failing as a governor, but I'll make sure to get you a check in the mail before the election comes so that you remind you where your bread is. So just to remind you where your bread is buttered.
yeah.
Don't fall for it,
Well,
California.
Shawn, well, we want to remind them on here of this, Shawn, what you just said, because a check for $400 is nothing compared to completely suspending. Really, they need to just get rid of all that gas taxes they're charging, because they do have a surplus in this state, which means that we're being overtaxed.
That's right.
And the citizens of California need to know that we're being overtaxed by our own government.
That's right.
And they don't care about the people. They care about using the money that belongs to the people of the state and use it for their own benefit and for the things that they want to use it for, which is not for the people.
That's right. You're absolutely right. Another point.
Projects.
That's right. Special interests. They're lining the pockets of their friends. Now, another thing I want to point out about the gas tax, because again, the frustrating thing is sometimes, and the Democrats will do this. They'll try to make it, it's just those greedy Republicans again. They want their tax reduction. This isn't even about taxes on the gas tax suspension. No. I hate the word. I hate that we even have to use the word tax, because this is just right and wrong. It's the difference between right and wrong. Yeah. Every other, pretty much every state, to include New York. So when it's not even like all the Democrat-led states, and New York is a very blue state. They suspended their gas tax 2 months ago because they recognize this is the right thing to do right now. There are people who are working really hard, commuting to work, just trying to put food on the table in their household right now. And they're refusing to do it. And I remind people, some people, because I have some of my friends who are Democrats say, well, what's that really going to do? 51 cents per gallon, 51 cents per gallon. I say, the fact that you say that to me suggests that you are immune. You have the privilege of saying such a thing. Because I can tell you, as a person who grew up in a household with a dad who was an electrician and every penny mattered, that 51 cents per gallon is the difference between a kid getting a new pair of cleats for their upcoming baseball season or basketball season or football season. That 51 cents is the difference between a mom being able to get bacon for their children, or maybe we just have to go with cereal this time at the grocery store. And I know that because I've lived it. And sometimes when I hear people say things like that, I cringe, because that means that they've lived a very privileged life, and they've never been in the position whereby 51 cents per gallon meant something. And that's the situation of our governor. That's another glaring example of when you have somebody who has lived a life of privilege and they are detached from reality, they say things that are insulting to the average hardworking person out there that's just trying to get by.
Yeah, well, I don't know why any Californian can't see that your government does not care about you.
That's right.
It doesn't care about the citizens of the state. And that's why my prayer is that we get the word out. That would be a great ad, by the way, showing all the states that are suspending their gas tax, except California.
Except California. We are pretty much the only state that has not done it yet.
Yeah, we're not doing it. So that needs to be pointed out. I don't know how you get that word out, how you can't beat it into people's heads, but you would think that.
Here's another point I'll make on it, Dolores, just so I make it crystal clear that the state of California, or at least your current elected officials up in Sacramento, do not care about you.
Yeah.
The Democrats, when asked, well, why won't you suspend the gas tax? Their number was to the supermajority, because they've been put on the spot. They keep saying, well, that money goes into a fund for infrastructure. We need that money for infrastructure. Here's why you should be insulted by that response. California ranks 36 out of 50 states in terms of the quality of their infrastructure. We have some of the worst infrastructure in all of America. So when they say we need that money for our infrastructure, you should be insulted by that, because now you have to ask the next question, which is, okay, you've been using this money for the past 10 years, allegedly for infrastructure, but our infrastructure is some of the worst in America.
Yeah.
So where exactly is all that money going?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I mean, it basically brings up, it pours more salt in the wound of EDD
Yeah,
and all the other government programs that are completely being mismanaged in this state. They are wasting our money.
yeah.
It's
Well,
insulting.
yeah, it is. And you see that every time you go out and drive on the street.
There's
You're
potholes
avoiding
everywhere.
potholes. Every street just about you go on, very few streets that you go on, even if you go into a street that doesn't have potholes, you're going to run into a pothole somewhere. And
That's
that's
right.
all over, not just every city has these potholes.
That's
And
right.
and it shouldn't be with the amount of money that they're taking from the citizens of California. But let me ask you this, moving on just a little bit from this, we can get back to this, but I want to know, why did you join the Navy?
Yeah, so I joined the Navy really trying to be like my big brother.
Oh, okay.
So like I say, my grandfather and my father were both in the United States Army. And then my
Uh-huh.
older brother was a surface warfare officer in the Navy. And so when I was still in undergrad, I was actually still at Rice University. I went on a Tiger cruise with my brother. I went out, got underway on his ship out of San Diego. And I remember thinking, I was like, man, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that was, I wish I had a more compelling story as to which branch I chose, but that was kind of it. I just wanted to be like my big brother who was
Oh,
in the
okay.
United States Navy.
Yeah. But you serve your country, so that was what's most important.
That's right. Now, and I did, I mean, so the service piece, that's baked into my DNA. Like I said, that
Mhm.
came from my dad inspired me to do that. Cause I always had, as a young child, I always had like the utmost respect for my father. Cause I still remember it. Like I have an image of it like it was yesterday. I'd be
Mhm.
4 or 5 and I'd walk into the kitchen early in the morning and my dad he'd just gotten in from his morning run. He'd be doing his push-ups and he was so regimented. And then right after he would do his PT, he'd start making breakfast for us. He'd be drinking his coffee, and this would be at 5 in the morning. It's pitch black
Mhm.
outside. But I remember that level of discipline that he always applied to his life. And as I got older, obviously when you get older, you start to appreciate routine and things that, routine is very important. It
Yes.
it it has a lot to do with who the individual actually is. If you look at a person's routine, it'll tell you a lot about who that person is and how they conduct their lives. And
Yeah.
that's my dad. My dad was
Amen.
always very regimented, and because he had so much structure and regiment in
Mhm.
his life wasn't always easy. We had a lot of rough patches, but the manner in which he was able to navigate those challenges in life, I truly believe was because of the discipline that was instilled in him by the United States Army.
Amen. Now, is your dad still living?
He is, yeah. He's
Oh, okay.
retired down in San Antonio, Texas. Yeah.
All right. All right. That's wonderful. Now, how does your family feel about you running for governor?
That's a great question. So they're
Mhm.
all very excited, very supportive. Both my mom, my dad, and my stepfather. But I'll say, like all three, my mom, my dad, and my stepfather, they're all Democrats.
Oh, okay.
So I'm a very unlikely Republican candidate. I grew up in a very Democrat household. My dad to this day is a diehard Democrat.
Mhm.
Obviously, he loves me and he knows who he raised. He knows the values he instilled in me. So even if I have an R by my name, he knows that I'm going to lead, and
Yeah.
I'm going to lead in a manner that with integrity, with honor, with courage and commitment, and
Yeah.
that any decision that I ever make is always going to be in the best interest of the people of California and in the
Amen.
greatness of California and the greatness of America, even if I come at it from a different political slant.
Yeah. Hey,
Um,
now, Shawn, if you were elected governor, what is one of the first things that you would do as governor?
Immediately get rid of the state of emergency. The fact that if your viewers out there aren't aware, we're currently still under a state of emergency in the state of California,
Mm-hmm.
which is just absolutely absurd.
Yep.
As a military officer, again, I always refer back to that, but I had a policy when as an officer. I always tell my people who are serving under me, I will never ask you to do anything that I am unwilling to do myself. And the reason why I have that rule is because if I give you an order that I'm unwilling to follow myself, that means that in my heart, I do not believe in that order. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's not a legitimate order. The same holds true for our governor right now. He has us under a state of emergency,
Mm.
yet he's been on numerous family vacations. He's gone to the
Yeah.
French Laundry with his friends with no mask on.
Mm-hmm.
He goes to the NFC Championship
Yeah.
game with no mask on in a stadium full of 70,000 people that aren't even 6 inches apart, let alone 6 feet apart. That is a glaring example of the fact that he does not believe there is truly a state of emergency.
No.
That state of emergency right now exists so that he can hold on to his ability to push through what I believe are illegitimate executive orders.
Yeah.
He's abusing his power as the governor of California.
Yeah, and
Because if there were
also gives
truly a
him
state of emergency, like me,
Mhm.
if I declare a state of emergency for the state of California, you have my absolute word that I will be hunkered down with you. I will be right there, side by side, shoulder to shoulder with you in that emergency until the emergency is declared over.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, that state of emergency is used as like a hammer over the heads of the people. It's control over the people.
That's right. That's exactly what it is. And that's why it will be the very first thing that I did immediately, first morning as governor. I would end the state of emergency because there is no state of emergency in this state.
Yeah, well, that's definitely something that's needed.
Yeah.
My friends
And
and the
then
people, wake up, Californians, wake up, people, wake up.
that's right. Wake up. And then after that, my second item of business would be I would start doing a complete audit of our government. And what I would start with is so I've been told that there are over, I think they said there's over 1,000, maybe more different government entities within our government. So agencies.
Yeah.
Our government has grown so big and so robust that we can't even keep track of it. And so I want to work with our state controller. Hopefully it'll be Lon Hee Chen, who's a Republican candidate, incredibly qualified. Please go check out Lon Hee. I would work with Lon Hee and do a full audit of our government, meaning I want to identify how many government agencies do we have in the state of California? What is their budget? What is their mission? What is their mandate? How are they using their budget to achieve that mission and that mandate? Because that's the only way we can figure out where is all of our money going? Because that's the biggest question. I get super frustrated when I talk to some of my friends who, identify as Democrats or independents. And they say, oh, all you Republicans ever complain about is taxes, taxes, taxes. And I tell them quickly, I say, hey, that's where you're getting us wrong. It's not about taxes. Look, we'll gladly pay taxes so long as we know we're getting a return on our investment.
Yes.
Okay. I have a problem paying the highest taxes in all of America when I'm getting some of the worst results in all of America. Like I said, we have some of the worst infrastructure in all of America. We have one of the worst homeless problems in all of America. We have some of the highest crime in all of America. And oh, by the way, our K through 12 education system is 40th out of 50 states.
Yeah.
40th out of 50. Now, here's the appalling thing about that, Dolores. Again, we're the 5th largest economy in the world, $300 billion budget, $100 billion surplus. We spend more per student than any state in all of America. Right now, we're spending roughly $16,000 per student, and we're getting the worst results of any state in America. That is a clear and glaring example of the fact that we do not have a resources problem in the state of California. We have a competence problem. So yes, I do have a problem paying more taxes when I'm getting a failing K through 12 education system in return for it.
Yep. And the indoctrination. I bring that up every time every chance I get. The indoctrination of our children into an education that is substandard. And the things that they're teaching our babies is just ridiculous. I won't say too much because I know I'll probably get banned if I say too much about it.
Right.
But it's the truth though. And
here's
and how much duplication is going on. You want to do an audit of the state of California. How much stuff is duplicated?
Oh, I guarantee you when we do that audit, we're going to find a lot of duplication. There's probably going to be 2, 3, sometimes 4 agencies that are doing the exact same thing and collecting money to do it. That's what's going to be the most appalling thing about it is I guarantee you when we do that audit, it's just going to be shocking. It's going to be eye-opening for the people of California to know where their money has been going for the past 20 some odd years.
Yeah.
But I want to touch upon something about education system, Dolores, because you bring up a great point. That's probably one of my biggest frustrations is that, especially here in the state of California, our K through 12 education system has been failing now for almost 20 years. When I say failing, I mean it's progressively getting worse every year. Like right now, we rank 50th out of 50 in literacy, meaning our children's ability to read, just to read and write, basic phonics. And what concerns me about that is we have a CTA right now, the teachers union. Here they are pushing so that they can include more CRT in our curriculum, more gender fluidity studies in our curriculum. And our kids can't even read and write. They can't even read and write. The Hoover Institution just put out a report that said 4 out of 10 of our children are reading at grade level. In our low-income communities, it's 2 out of 10.
Mm, mm, mm.
My message to the CTA and all these other special interests who want, gender fluidity and sexual orientation and all these other things baked into the
Mm.
curriculum, no. Until our children can read and write, we're not even going to have a discussion about adding things to the curriculum. It's absolutely absurd that they're having a discussion about including these divisive and destructive topics in our curriculum when our children can't even do the basics right.
Yeah. Well, even if they can read, that curriculum has no place in the learning and curriculum of the students of this state. It has no place.
Oh,
But
100% agree.
all that stuff, Shawn, should be taught at home. If parents have the responsibility of teaching their children about these moral issues, that is not why they go to school. They go
You're
there to
absolutely
learn.
right,
It
Dolores.
has nothing to do with those issues. They should not be taught at all. They're
You're
out of
absolutely
line,
right.
completely out of line, teaching
I tell
these
people that.
babies.
I tell people that all the time. Look, if one of my children brings up something at school, asks a teacher a question, I want that teacher to call me and say, hey, your child asked me this. You should have a conversation with them. They should not be having that conversation with my child because you are taking away my ability as a parent to be a parent. Okay, because that's my big problem with our schools now. Just at a very high level, if you say, Shawn, what's your problem with the school system right now? Our school system from kindergarten all the way up through academia and college, we are teaching children what to think instead of teaching them how to think.
That's
There
right.
is a very big difference between those two. A very big difference between those two.
Yeah.
And we need to get back to teaching children how to think.
Yes. And we actually don't want them teaching them how, because what they're thinking about is, no, we don't want them teaching them how to think because we don't want them thinking like them.
Right.
What we need is God. The one thing that we need that can make a difference. We hear people talking about morality and we talk about the school shootings and we talk about all this stuff. But the one ingredient that no one ever talks about in the government is a lack of God and a lack of morals and values being taught to our children. Those things are ripped away. You can't talk about the Bible. You can't talk about God. You can't talk about Bible. They don't even want you to salute the flag in school. They don't want you to be patriotic,
That's why I'm such a big proponent of school choice. So for instance, I send my children to a private school. People say, well, why do you send your children to a private school? Your Orange County schools have world-class public school system. I said, no, I know that. But for me, it's very important that my children learn about God.
Yes.
So my children go to chapel 4 days a week. Now, look, I'm not trying to say that's what's right for everybody. I have the utmost respect for everybody to worship in whatever manner they see fit.
Yes.
I'm not trying to impose my beliefs upon people, but I'm saying Shawn Collins and my wife, Zaina, our personal choice is that we want our children to have a spiritual framework. We want them to be talking about God in school. So we chose a school whereby they could receive that. Now, here's the reality of it. Every other child out there in California, their parent should have that choice.
Yes.
That's why I'm a proponent of school choice, because I could not agree with you more, of course. We have gotten to a point where we have completely forbidden anybody from using the word God in our public schools. But if a parent wants their child learning about God, but doesn't have the financial means to do that, school choice should be available to them so that they have the option to send their child where they can learn about God during the day. And that is probably the biggest reason why school choice should exist, because I couldn't agree with you more. Look, I just, I don't want to go too deep into this, into the Uvalde, because it pains me that we're not talking about the tragic loss of those 21 lives.
Yes.
And we're talking about gun laws and, should police be armed? And it's just like, we're not honoring the lives of these tragic victims. We're not honoring their lives. But my thing is, all right, if you are going to engage in that dialogue, which I don't think right now is the proper time to do it, but if you are going to do it, have the real conversation.
Yes.
Have the real conversation. That child needed love, meaning the child that committed these heinous acts, he needed love, and he was never given love his entire life.
Yeah.
Society, his family, his community, they missed him. They failed him. And so to try to blame the gun and make it seem as if the gun law would have solved all this, that's laziness. That's laziness on the part of society, because we don't want to take ownership for the fact that That child needed love. He needed
Yes.
God,
Yep.
and he never got it. He never got it. And that's a tough conversation for people to have. And it's easier for them to say, oh, we need stricter gun laws.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, look, you're looking at an individual. People say, well, are you a proponent of no gun laws? I said, no, I am a proponent of gun laws.
Yeah.
I absolutely think a person should have a background check. And I'm a big proponent of red flag laws, which is sometimes controversial for Republican candidates. But I don't care. A red flag law says that if an individual has recently had some type of mental break or been checked into a mental institution, they need to have their weapons removed from
Yes.
them for a period of time until such time that they are deemed to be safe again.
Yeah.
To me, there's nothing
That's
controversial
just
about
common
that.
sense. That's
It's
common sense. And you know,
But
Shawn, yeah,
that is
I'm
just
sorry.
part of the problem. That is
Yeah.
just part of the problem, because we're still missing the big piece of the problem, which is these children need God. They need
Yes,
love.
that's it.
Because I tell everybody, look, even if that young man couldn't have bought two AR-15s, he could have done the same thing with the machete. He could have made a
Yeah.
bomb in his garage. There's a
Yeah.
lot of ways he could have done harm to people other than a gun. Because here's the problem. He had evil in his heart.
Yes.
And taking his gun away was not going to remove that evil from his heart.
Yeah. Yeah, he had a made up mind that he was going to do what he was going to do. And whether, like you say, whether it was a gun or a knife, he was going to carry out what he did. And he had a
That's
plan
right.
to do it. And so, like I say, it goes back to the upbringing and
That's right.
and the love that we have for our children. But I'll say, as a person who thinks that, yeah, there should be background checks for people, and people who are mentally unstable should not have guns. They should not have them. But
That's
people
right.
who are stable should have the right. And we have that Second Amendment right for a reason, because guess what? If those who are going to do right and protect this society don't have guns, the only ones that have guns are the criminals.
That's right.
If we go and take all the guns from society like some want to do, guess what? You have a bunch of more people dying, because
You're
those
absolutely right.
you have more crime than you do now. And we have rampant crime now, but it'd be a lot worse if you take guns from law-abiding citizens who are only going to stand up and protect their families and protect their neighbors, if it comes down to it, and protect those school children.
That's right.
And I see Mr. Schumer says, oh no, we don't need more guns in school. I said, yeah, you need those teachers who will have a concealed carry. You need what would have happened if those teachers had a concealed carry, who will stand up to protect those children? How many of them would still be alive? They'd all probably still be alive, because if that teacher had a concealed carry, not to go out and do crazy stuff, but to protect those children from such a crazy thing that happened, such an evil thing that happened. If that teacher had a weapon, had been trained in the proper use of gun, and stayed up on their training and all that stuff.
Right.
Her, him, whoever. Teachers have that, those who choose to. I'm not saying, because everybody doesn't want to do that, but there are some teachers who are capable of doing it and who would like to do it, not for nefarious reasons, but to protect those children from the very type of person that came into that classroom. If we'd had that, though, more than likely those children would still be alive. That's
right. Well, I mean, here, I want to kind of bring it back to California, just to kind of highlight I would say, I don't want, the misguided arguments that are being made politically right now. So people say we need stricter guns. California has the strictest gun laws in all of America. Yeah. Okay. So California has universal background checks. The piece of legislation that they're saying that, the 50 senators won't approve it. Yeah. California has that. And we've had it for about 10 years now. We have red flag laws. So California has a red flag law that says that even when you purchase your gun, you have to wait at least 10 days so that an evaluation could be done to determine whether or not you have recently been institutionalized or have had some type of mental illness. And that 10-day period can be extended until they verify that you are not a threat to yourself or to society. California has those laws on the books. Again, the strictest, and we have restrictions on assault weapons, all the stuff that's being said. Had this been in place, Texas would have never happened. California has that already. Yeah. And we've had 2 mass shootings in the past 2 months. One in Sacramento which was gang related, and then one
Yes.
just down here in my area in Orange County 2 weeks ago. Now, here's why I'm upset about that. Okay. First of all, the loss of those lives was tragic. Okay. I
Yes.
want to start with that. And I
Mm.
by no means do I want to politicize the
Mm.
lives of these people.
No.
But what bothers me is our governor. If you go look at his social media feed right now on Twitter, on anything, he's all over the internet and in front of any camera that will listen to him, basically, effectively kind of poking fun at Texas and saying, Texas, if you would have actually had gun laws on the books, this could have been prevented. He's politicizing it. Now, what bothers me about that, Dolores, is, do you know our governor said nothing about the 2 mass shootings that happened in his own backyard? No statement. No, nothing. Didn't honor the lives of these people. Didn't send condolences to the family. None of that. He was mute when it happened in his own backyard. But he has a lot to say when it happens in somebody else's state, because he wants everybody to know, hey, I'm about to run for president, and this is why you should vote for me. Is because this is what my gun laws look like in California, and this is what Governor Greg Abbott's gun laws look like in Texas. Never mentioning the fact that he's had mass shootings in his own backyard in the past month.
Yes.
That's the kind of individual that we have leading the state of California right now.
Yeah. Well, they focus on the mass shootings, but they don't talk about the shootings that take place every day and every weekend across this country.
Now, Dolores, now you're tapping into something that just really bothers me, because, we got some of the worst gang violence in all of America here in California.
Yeah.
Again, and I grew up in a community like that where, I had friends growing up that lost their lives to gun violence. All right. And so I can tell you, with drug cartels running rampant in some of the communities here in the state of California, young kids are losing their lives to gang violence right now as you and I speak.
Yes.
Okay. And so, again, we're in the state with the most restrictive gun laws in all of America. So, it's just, for me, to say the laws, you can't legislate away evil.
No, you can't.
So, look, I am all for the legislation, but we also have to acknowledge there's a other component of that. Society has changed. Somebody made a great point the other day, and I never really thought about it, but they said, they quoted a stat. Apparently, like before 1950, over 60% of the households in America had a gun in them.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I think it's under 30% of households in America have a gun in them. And then if you look at the number of mass shootings that happened pre-1950, it's minuscule.
Yeah.
And then in recent times, it's off the charts. And the point that they were making is, they said, the guns have always been here. That's never changed. It's society that's changed.
Yes, it's
and
the mentality, like, wow, people's mindset. Yep, the mentality. Because there was a town, I think it was in Georgia, that every household was required to have a gun. Guess what?
That's right. I mean,
they didn't have any crime. No crime.
Growing up, I mean, my grandpa had numerous shotguns and rifles and handguns. We had one in my house.
Everybody had guns. But, but the guns don't jump up and shoot. It's the mind, it's the person. It's
society.
It's the mentality. We don't hold people accountable, Shawn. We want to jump up and talk about gun laws and gun this, gun that. But you got to hold the individual responsible for what they do. If they go out and kill somebody, the gun didn't do the killing. The gun didn't jump into your head. It was the evil that jumped into your head and your heart to do evil. So you can't blame I mean, it's just common sense.
That's right. Now, another thing I will say on this topic, I am also in favor of imputed liability.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is parents now need to be held responsible and accountable. Because the thing that bothers me is, you cannot tell me that the guardians, I know that I've read a little bit that said that apparently the father wasn't in this child's life from Uvalde, the one that committed the heinous act. Father wasn't in the life, mom was a drug addict, and he was effectively raised by the grandparents. All right. But here's the reality of the situation. All right. Within 5 minutes every morning, I can tell you with all 4 of my children if they're having a good or a bad day. Because that's my job as a parent. I watch them. I look at them. I study their emotions. I study how they're talking and everything, because I'm an engaged parent. All right. And that's my job. I'm not asking for a pat on the back. That's what I'm responsible for, because I brought them into the world. That's my duty now. These parents or the guardians or the grandparents and everybody in that community, I don't have the full facts right now, but I guarantee you that from probably 2 to 4 years in advance of this happening, he gave all kinds of
Yes.
indications that he was mentally unstable.
Yeah.
And the tragedy here is that everybody turned a blind eye to it.
Yeah.
Nobody said anything. Nobody did anything.
Yeah.
Okay. And parents we have to get back to that in society where parents take ownership for their children and there's the actions of their children. It's that accountability. What triggered that thought, Dolores, is when you said accountability. So yes, the criminals need to be accountable. And if that young man were alive, he would need to be held fully accountable. But the parents need to be held accountable too.
Yes.
Because you were responsible for raising that young man and creating the environment that he grew up in. And you got to own that. I'm saying that about my children as well. If my children go out into the world and do something, I got to own that because I produced that. I raised that. That's called accountability. And we got to build that back into our system. So I am a big proponent of imputed liability. If you're going to have weapons in your household, which is your absolute Second Amendment right, your right to do that comes with the fact that you are also responsible for securing those weapons.
Yes.
And knowing that if you have a mentally unstable child in your house, that you have a even bigger burden to secure those weapons.
That's
or
right.
else the responsibility comes back to you. Again, I know that might be controversial with some, but I wholeheartedly believe in that.
No, we have to talk common sense, Shawn. We have to just tell the truth.
Right.
And unfortunately, the truth is not always told. Now, tell us about your tour of duty in Kandahar, Afghanistan.
Yeah. So, can you still hear me?
Yes.
All right, good. All right, I switched over on my headsets. So my tour of duty in Afghanistan, that was, so I'll say that.
You're going out. Can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
Can't hear you.
Hello?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Sorry about that. So I always tell people, I got my undergraduate degree from Rice University, economics degree, law degree, 3 years at University of Texas. I even got a master's degree from the Naval War College while I was on active duty in the Navy. So I have all these, fancy degrees and whatnot. But I always tell people that 1 year I spent in Afghanistan was the biggest education of my life. Boy, I learned a lot about humanity, about sacrifice, about the band of brotherhood that you get in combat. It was just eye-opening. So I'll say that it was a very unconventional tour for a JAG. So, I'm a lawyer. I'm a Navy lawyer. And how I ended up in Kandahar City with the Army unit, Security Forces Advisory Team 10, and probably the most dangerous place in all of Afghanistan was a bit of a fluke. I volunteered for my deployment because at the time I got passed over for promotion to 04, and I was, I went to my CO in the Navy. I said, "Hey, I'm your best judge advocate. I went on my court martials. Why did I get passed over for promotion?" And he said, "Well, you haven't deployed yet." And I said, "Well, I wanted to do that. I just hadn't gotten to it yet because at the time we were in Iraq and Afghanistan." And so I volunteered. I said, "All right, well, I'm ready to deploy now." And so, I raised my hand. Now, little did I know at the time, this was when we were making the pivot from Iraq to Afghanistan. So Obama had done the surge. And so I was part of that surge of troops into Afghanistan. Now, when I got there, we were having an issue with detainees. So the detention facility in Parwan, which is up at the Bagram Air Base, we heard a lot about that. That was the controversial thing. Should we or should we not have given away Bagram?
Yeah.
That's the air base that we have in the northern part of the state. That's just a little bit northwest of Kabul. That detention facility had about 5,000 detainees in it and had no more capacity.
Wow.
And so the UN was down on our backs because there had been some people detained there since 2001 when America had first gotten to Afghanistan. And some of those people, we didn't have any basis for holding them. And so the legal argument was, well, you Americans have this whole due process of law thing, but you've been holding these people with no evidence to support their detention. Now, our initial response was, well, they're prisoners of war. But then the UN called us out and said, well, there's been no formal declaration of war, which we didn't have a formal declaration of war in Afghanistan. Therefore, you can't classify them as prisoners of war. So there's kind of this legal gray area. So the one thing we knew is we couldn't keep, especially if we were going to be adding troops to country, we were going to be rounding up more detainees. we couldn't keep putting them in detention facilities. So we had to come up with a system whereby we could say, all right, if you're just a regular common criminal in Afghanistan, we'll hand you over to the criminal justice system. And if you're somebody that's potentially a ISIS or, you know, a high value, you know, target, we'll process you through the United States military. So I kind of became the tip of the spear with that. So I was part of the rule of law field force. So that was one of my missions. And then I was also tasked with trying to help rebuild the criminal infrastructure in Afghanistan so that they could try petty criminals there in Kandahar City. So the irony of my situation is I ended up getting assigned to a unit where we were assigned to a guy named General Abdul Razik. So at the time in Afghanistan, he was probably, if the Taliban had it, we'd really like to kill this guy today. He was number 3 on that list. So Hamid Karzai was number 1. Hamid Karzai's little brother, who was the governor of Kandahar, Wali Karzai, was number 2, whom they killed my first month there in country. And then my guy was number 3, General Abdul Razik. And so one of the reasons that if you go to my website, it'll say he survived a suicide bombing and a car bombing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they would try to kill the guy that we lived with at least once a month.
Wow.
2 times they got danger close when I was in close proximity. So the suicide bomber that detonated himself in General Razik's office, and I was about 30 meters away on that one. So yeah, I felt the
yeah.
I felt the energy transfer of that blast.
Okay.
And then the second one was a car bomb that they hit our gate with, Toyota Corolla. Yeah, and
well, you had the protection of God over you.
I did 100%. That's all it was. You know, it's funny. So that I struggled with my faith after Afghanistan. I'll be candid with that, just because there was no, like, you start to ask, like, how does God pick winners and losers? And so I'll give you a concrete example of what I'm talking about. So, you know, I lived in Kandahar City. So we lived in a tent. There was 20 of us, and we lived with thousands of Afghans. And so, you know, we were cut off from a base. We weren't anywhere near a base. And the closest base to us was probably, I don't know, 30 minutes away. And so every once in a while, probably once a month or once every 2 months, I'd get the opportunity to go over to a base just to kind of get some R&R and feel normal, you know, eat some hot food and just relax a little bit. So I went to Camp Nathan Smith, which was the provincial reconstruction team there in Kandahar, and these 2 young lieutenants came up to me and they wanted to eat lunch with me. And they're asking me all these questions because they had been on a base. And so I'm like this bright, shiny object that's actually been out in the field with Afghans. They're asking me all these questions. What's it like? You know, and so they tried to talk me into doing this big jirga that we were going to be doing. So we were having this big meeting of all the tribal elders in Helmand and Kandahar. And, you know, it looks good for a junior officer to be a part of something like that. And so they wanted me to go. I said, you know, no, I just want to enjoy my one night that I get to spend at Camp Nathan Smith. And so that night, when they were preparing for that big meeting, an Afghan national policeman who was really part of the Taliban, but was wearing an ANP uniform, took his AK-47 and shot up a tent that they were in and killed both of those young lieutenants.
Oh my goodness. And
so that night I heard about it over the comms, and I went out, and I'll never forget it. I remember seeing both of those young lieutenants in black body bags being put to the back of an MRAP, which is one of our mine-resistant anti-personnel vehicles, is what MRAP stands for. And that was haunting because I still to this day I remember their faces. You know, one of them was just recently married. They're young. You know, at the time I was 30 and they're young lieutenants. So they may have been 24. 23, 24. And so, you know, the power of decisions, like maybe I say, yes, sure, I'll go do that. And I'm standing right there in that tent with them. And so you're like, I don't have all the answers. You know, I don't know much about life. I know 2 things. I know there is a God, and I know that I'm not him or her, because I also don't know if God is a him or a her. I don't have the answer to that. But, you know, I struggle with that. Like, why me? And why not them? And so I don't know. I try to live my life with a lot of purpose and intention and a lot of gratitude, because I truly know that every day is a gift. It's not guaranteed, you know. And so make it count. Every second of it, make it count. And so
Yeah.
yeah, that was a big lesson, big takeaway for me. Other big thing, because I had to, when I was up in El Dorado County recently, I was campaigning, and somebody asked me, they said, what gives you the confidence that you can lead the fifth largest economy in the world? And I said, that's a great question. And this is what I know. Look, I'm 41 years old. I've had quite a few life experiences for a 41-year-old. But, and I was telling them, I said, leadership's a funny thing, because I know for certain that degrees and job titles don't make you a leader. I mean, look at our governor right now. He's had every major job title that you could possibly have. On paper, he looks like the perfect governor. Like, you couldn't have a better governor. He's had every job that you need to have to be governor, but he's not a leader. And that's me objectively saying he's not a leader. He's not. He doesn't lead on anything.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing about leadership is you don't ever know you're ready for leadership until you're actually in that position. Because leadership is forged through fire, through dealing with adversity. And how resilient are you? How do you handle adversity? That's the only way you'll ever know whether or not you got a leader on your hands.
Yeah. And
so a prime example of that would be, we had a situation in Afghanistan where we had a young soldier who took his first human life, so we had a rough day. And he took the life of an Afghan. And so the young man was bawling his eyes out, just crying. And so his sergeant comes over to me and says, "Hey, sir, would you mind go talking to him?" And I said, "Well, look, I'm just the JAG here. I'm not his company commander. I don't know if I'm the right person to do that." He said, "Sir, you are, because he trusts you." Because we were probably at about the 7-month mark of a year-long deployment. And so we were family at that point in time. And I had become like a big brother to a lot of these guys. Because like I say, I was 30 at the time, which is old in military standards. A lot of these guys, he's 18 or 19 at the time. So they're young. And so they said, "Sir, he trusts you." And so I had to go talk to this young man because there's only 20 of us. And so we all have to pull watch. And so he was supposed to be on watch that night. We needed him up in the observation post to keep us safe at night.
Yeah.
And you can't swap people out, because if we swap him out, now we're taking away sleep from the next guy. And so I had to go talk to this young man and say, "Hey, I know that you're emotionally hurt right now, and that you're struggling, but we need you to be great right now, young man. And look, my fancy degrees and all my job titles, they don't prepare you for anything like that. I had to talk to that man on a level of, I see you, I love you. That's leadership.
Yeah.
That's leadership. One-on-one.
Well, God doesn't make any mistakes, and he places us where he places us for a reason, and prepares us, just like he's prepared you for such a time as this, with all the, all the things that you've gone through, every step of our lives, it's God that prepares us. Sometimes people don't realize that, but he has a purpose for our lives, and the choices that we make even in life. Sometimes we look back on our lives and reflect and don't realize sometimes that, it was God that prepared me for what I'm doing right now, or what I'm getting ready to do, the impact that I'm going to have on somebody else's life. He's one that's preparing me.
I tell you, I certainly see that. As I'm walking through faith right now, I see that. Because like I say, when that question was posed to me up in El Dorado, I thought about that and I was like, wow, that's why he put me through that. So that I would know, because at the time, I wouldn't even classify that as leadership. I just classified it as me as, all right, this young man trusts me. He needs me right now. And so I would not, in that moment, I would not have labeled that as exhibiting leadership. I look back on it now and I reflect on it, and it's like, all right, that was a very difficult circumstance, but I didn't shy away from it. I kind of stepped into it, and and whether or not I got it right then, I don't know, but I at least went through the intellectual and emotional exercise of trying to get it right, and that is what helps you develop the skill set of leadership. So.
Amen. So now you pretty much grew up in Dallas?
I did, yeah.
Okay,
I didn't have the great fortune. I didn't have the great fortune of being born in California. I tell people I had to earn this. I had to earn the right to live in California, which is why I am not leaving.
Yeah, most of my family are in Texas, Dallas, in East Texas. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I grew up in
Yeah.
the Oak Cliff area.
Oh,
South
okay. Yeah,
Dallas
I got a
area.
cousin in Oak Cliff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now I think that, your life growing up, you had a tough life as a young toddler.
I
And I
did.
read
Yeah.
your bio. And so even that from a little fellow, God has been preparing you your whole life.
That's right. He has. I mean, it's another thing. Again, you kind of reflect on it. Because look, and this is a testament to my father and my mother. Because look,
Yeah.
their marriage didn't work out. They divorced when I was 3, and that kind of set off a series of events where life was challenging for us. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. For my brother and I, we lived in about 8 different houses over the course of the time between us being young children until we got out of high school. At 2 points, we were almost homeless with my dad. So my father had primary custody of us, which is also kind of different. A lot of people say, how'd your father end up having primary custody of you after your parents divorced? My mom was very intimidated by the prospect of trying to raise 2 young Black men. So she grew up in an abusive home with an abusive father. And then her family was just ravaged by the crack pandemic. So a lot of her brothers and sisters just went the way of drugs in the 80s, crack pandemic.
Yeah.
And so, my mom and I have had a candid conversation about this. She was like, I just didn't have confidence in my ability to raise you and your brother at that time, because I didn't come up in a family framework whereby I had the skill set to give you guys what I thought you needed as young Black men. I thought you needed a man in your life to teach you how to be men. So yeah, my dad had primary custody of us. And my dad had his own bumps, so he ended up getting remarried to a woman that was not so kind. I'm not going to speak negatively about her right now, but she's not very kind. She was emotionally and physically abusive at times. And so, there are 2 points in when my dad was raising us where we were almost homeless. And I tell people that a lot because we're facing a homelessness problem right now in the state of California.
Yes.
And 1/3 of our homeless population are people who have fallen on hard times. I know exactly what that looks like because, by the grace of God, my dad did have a strong family network. His brothers and sisters are very close. So my uncle and my aunts took us in on those 2 separate occasions. So we slept on their couches, their floors, until we could get back on our feet. But I always remind people that because I know exactly what it means to be 1 paycheck away from being homeless. I've lived that from my father. And so to your point, bringing it back home though, Dolores, those life experiences are what give me the ability to connect with people. Because when I tell you, I see you, I understand what you're going through, I literally have a vivid image in my head of what it was like to be there. Like I remember it. I can retrieve that memory in my mind and say, all right, this is the emotional hat you need to put on right now to address that situation because you've walked in those shoes before.
Yeah. That's why, how children grow up. And I always said it's so important in the background, having the parents, grandparents involved in the lives, uncles and aunts who step up to the plate.
That's right.
And make a difference. And you don't realize it at the time when you're little, but when you grow up, you look back on your life and you realize you've been trained for something greater than you would realize until later in life. That God was preparing you even as a child,
That's right. That's right. And I love the fact that you pointed that out, like the support network, the uncles, the aunts, because look, I don't want to go back to the Uvalde situation, but that's my point. That's my point. Look, my brother and I, we bounced around from house to house, but we always were surrounded by love.
Yes.
Like I could rattle off the names of my uncles and aunts who, when my dad was working till 9 at night and couldn't pick us up from practice, that swooped in to grab my brother and I from practice, or just let us stay at their house until my dad got off of work and fed us dinner. I mean, there was always a different uncle, aunt that was there. Yeah. And so that young man in Uvalde didn't have any of that. Yeah. He didn't have any of that. So yeah, my brother and I had difficult circumstances, but we always had a cocoon of love around us.
Yeah, that makes all the difference, makes all the difference.
Makes all the difference in the world.
I want to applaud you for your involvement in your children's lives. I see you coach their basketball in the baseball teams. You're involved in your community. I want to applaud you for that because we need fathers. at a time when sometimes society kind of diminishes dads, but we need fathers, we need men, strong men, to be involved in the lives of their children and children in the community, because it's not just your own children that you need to be involved in. Some of these children that don't have parents need a strong leader, a strong man, a strong woman who will step up and help that child, to move forward. So it's about all of us, be involved when we can, when God calls us to be involved and help that child out, because you just never know the impact that you have on them, later on.
That's right. And I mean, that kind of brings it back again. That's why community is so important, especially when you're talking about faith-based communities. So, I touched upon my aunts and uncles, but even with youth sports, so I grew up playing youth sports. I don't know if you're familiar with Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship, Pastor Tony Evans. Yeah. So that's the church I grew up in. So my dad's Catholic. My mom was a parishioner at Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship. So I grew up in that church. I mean, from age 5 playing youth sports. I played youth sports with Pastor Evans' sons, Jonathan and Tony.
Okay.
Yeah, I was on every sport team with them. And so, but when I look back on it, like my coaches, Ray Williams, I mean, God rest his soul, he passed recently, but these were people, again, when my mom and dad were out working, just trying to make it, just trying to get by, I had that community, that Oakland Bible Fellowship community, in addition to my aunts, my uncles. There was always this community around me that was there to catch me when I needed it. We don't have that anymore, at least from my vantage point. That's missing in society right now.
And you can tell.
And I want to try to bring that back, so just, you say, well, you're actively involved with your children, very actively involved with my children, but we also live in a community where we're blessed, where we have that, like routinely, I'll get a message and say, hey, I can't get over to grab my son from practice. Would you mind bringing him home? I'm like, yeah, I'm sitting here in the parking lot right now. I got him. I'll bring him home for you. Yeah, are you sure? And then I tell him, I was like, I can take him home with me and feed him. Don't rush. We got extra food at the house. Like they used to be normal.
Yep, that's right.
And we need to get back to that.
Yes, that's right. We don't need government money to do that.
Exactly. That's easy. That's easy. That comes out of the goodness of your heart.
That's right.
There's no government program that can create that.
No, they can't. Yeah, that's why people are important.
That's right.
Yes. Well, Shawn, tell me about your, I know you ran 8 triathlons. So tell that's okay. Are you still very competitive in those kind of things? Are you?
I am. So that's like my hobby. I got a lot of energy. I like to be moving a lot. And so I'm an exercise enthusiast. So I played college basketball. So basketball was like my passion growing up. Well, so basketball, baseball, and football. I played all 3 sports all the way through high school, but I chose to play basketball in college. And so when I graduated college, I knew I wasn't going to play professional basketball, but I still have that competitive edge in me. I love sport. I love everything about sport. Some of my biggest life lessons I've received through sport. And so I chose triathlons to kind of channel my competitive sporty nature. Yeah, so I haven't been for the past year. I've been campaigning, so I still get my 30 minutes to an hour of exercise every morning, but I haven't had time to train for a triathlon. So
okay.
I'm putting that on hold right now so we can fix California.
Amen. Well, now that the citizens of California have heard all about Shawn Collins, what are your final words that you'd like to share, and also tell us how people can get in touch with you, your website, etc.
Yeah. So my final words I'll say is, don't be discouraged. Look, I have always, my entire life, been a glass is half full kind of guy. And so no matter how bad things seem, or no matter how bad they may feel, we can turn this around here in the state of California. I know a lot of people have been voting with their feet. We've lost over 500,000 residents in the state of California over the past 5 years.
Yes.
And a lot of them have just been driven out because of the economic situation. They can no longer afford to live in California. But we can turn this thing around. Don't concede defeat. All we need is leadership in this state, because a lot of the problems have easy solutions. And I don't mean to make light of government.
Yes.
But the reality of it is it just requires the political will. I'll use the gas tax again as another example. That's something that can be done immediately if there's the political will to do it.
Yes.
If politicians are willing to put aside their special interest in their agenda for whatever that 53 cents per gallon is going
Yes.
towards and say, my constituents need me to help them out right now. It's as simple as that. Suspend the gas tax, fixing our K through 12 education system right now. Let's stop funding the special interests and let's fund the students. Let's get back to basics. But that takes leadership. That takes political will. That takes the ability to tell special interests, no, I'm not beholden to you. I'm beholden to the 40 million Californians in the state of California. And so I want to be that. I want to lead this state. If you'll humbly give me the opportunity to. Voting is June 7th. You can vote early right now. So I would encourage you to do it early. But if not, don't let June 7th go by without going out to vote. And you can find out more about me at my website. It's ShawnCollinsforCA.com. That's ShawnCollinsforCA.com. And then the other easy way to do it is if you type Shawn Collins for governor in a Google search engine, I'm the first thing that pops up.
Okay. Okay, that is great. That is great. Well, Shawn, I want to thank you for being courageous, standing up for the citizens of California, for our veterans, and standing up for our beloved America, because we love this country and we want to see it better all the way across. Yeah. And to each of you, my audience, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch and to listen to this podcast. If you have a message to share, you can reach me at dwsviewstandup@gmail.com. Remember to subscribe to my podcast so you'll get these latest recordings. Share this message on your social media with your friends. Share it with everybody. And be sure to join us again next week. We'll have another wonderful guest at DW's View Stand Up. Guess what? The charge for you each week, Shawn, I tell them each week, charge for every one of you is to do what? To stand up. Because guess what? If we do not stand up for what we believe, who will?
That's right.